In the modern context of conservatism and right-wing politics, comic book characters like Rorschach, John Walker, Amanda Waller, Lex Luthor, and yes, comic book Tony Stark. Not MCU Tony Stark, not Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark, Marvel Comics Tony Stark, in several big storylines, has been right-wing or right-wing leaning in his actions. I'm not saying comic book Tony Stark has always been right-wing. It depends on the comic book era and the comic book storyline. But comic book Tony Stark has made decisions and done things that could be considered right-wing in a modern political context. This is not an attack on you or your political beliefs. I'm a comic book geek discussing imaginary comic book worlds. It's not that serious. I understand that you've seen every MCU film and RDJ's portrayal of Tony Stark. I was there too. But please understand, in this video, in this context, I'm talking about Marvel Comics Tony Stark, who is wildly dissimilar to the MCU Tony Stark. This video is about comic book Tony Stark, and I'm going to use that term, comic book Tony Stark, as much as possible throughout this video, so no one gets to voluntarily pretend I'm talking about the MCU Tony Stark. I understand a lot of modern comic book fans don't read comics, so I want y'all to understand I'm not talking about the MCU Tony Stark. My main point is we are currently in a war in Iran, and the last time I checked, Congress was the only political body that could declare war. The president is engaged in unchecked personal business transactions that benefit the office and no one else. And decisions are being made that affect the country and the world. Decisions made by one man. The ideals of conservatism are, they're basically about federalism, the idea that there should be limited government, American exceptionalism, free markets, unhindered capitalism, and strong capital defense. Defending the homeland as much as possible and doing whatever it takes to defend the homeland. How does that connect to comic book Tony Stark? I'm going to use two examples of Tony Stark's right-wing-like actions, his activities in 2006 Civil War comic book and 2014 Superior Iron Man. Now, if you must argue in the comments, please argue with the facts of these comic book events and the actions of comic book Tony Starks, not your feelings and not the MCU Tony Stark. Spoilers ahead for these storylines if you've never read them. Hey, it's your boy Ace from pfadvice.com. Like, share, subscribe, get notified, hit the bell, leave a comment, join the movement. Thank you for subscribing. 2006 Civil War comic book was a thinly veiled commentary on American politics in a post-9/11 world. What does it mean to be free if you have no privacy, enhanced surveillance by the government, proactive wars, and military actions, and the forced government registration of costumed superheroes? Should the United States government do whatever it takes to reinforce American exceptionalism and keep superheroes in check, no matter the consequences? And remember, I'm talking about Marvel Comics and comic book Tony Stark, not the real world or the MCU Tony Stark. The inciting incident for Civil War is the New Warriors, teen superheroes battling villains while filming a reality TV show in Stamford, Connecticut. One of the villains, Nitro, explodes and decimates the city, and over 600 people lose their lives. Tony Stark, comic book Tony Stark, becomes a government figurehead and oversees the ratification of the Superhero Registration Act. Anyone with superpowers was considered a weapon of mass destruction, a living weapon of mass destruction. They now had to register with the government, reveal their true identity, and work for the government under the auspices of SHIELD or risk imprisonment. This divided the superhero community, with some siding with Stark and others siding with Captain America, who was now a rebel leader who believed that the government was overreaching and had no right to regulate and control superheroes. I'm going to condense everything Tony Stark did in this comic because a lot happened in this event. Stark was a zealot, a right-wing lobbyist, and public advocate for the Superhero Registration Act, even though he once kept his identity secret. Stark built a negative zone prison along with Reed Richards and Hank Pym to imprison anyone with powers who did not comply with the Superhero Registration Act. Tony Stark publicly vilified and hunted his former colleagues and allies, anyone who refused to comply. Stark actually killed people too. Stark created a false flag event. He had Titanium Man attack him after a congressional event to highlight the threat of unregistered superheroes. Stark and Reed Richards created a clone of Thor to confuse and intimidate the rebels, and the Thor clone killed Bill Foster, also known as Goliath. Stark manipulated Norman Osborn to attack Atlantean ambassadors to sway public opinion toward the Superhero Registration Act and bolster his military contracts. Stark also manipulated Peter Parker into publicly revealing his identity to help the Superhero Registration Act. Stark was even the head of S.H.I.E.L.D. for a while and created a 50-state program where state-sanctioned superhero agents would patrol each state to keep the peace. A lot more happened, but that was the gist of right-wing comic book Tony Stark in Civil War. In Superior Iron Man, a great series, Stark moves to San Francisco, and as a billionaire industrialist and capitalist, he gives away an app to the public, Extremis 3.0, that allows for body alteration and it cured diseases. After a free trial, Stark charges $99 per day for the app. Daredevil came to stop him. He cured Daredevil's blindness temporarily to try to get Daredevil on his side. The storyline reflected the current political era where government entities and employees, billionaire employees, and those in the White House sell products directly to the public to benefit themselves. Now, you don't have to like or agree with anything I said. This is all up for debate. Also, I'm talking about certain eras of comic book Tony Stark, not the totality of his existence in Marvel Comics. So tell me what you think. Comment below. Thanks for watching.